Now, Nigeria's umbrella labor unions, the NLC and the TUC, have reached a deal with the federal government. One key point: tomorrow's planned strike will no longer hold. The National Industrial Court of Nigeria in Abuja had ordered the Nigeria Labour Congress and the Trade Union Congress to not embark on the planned strike to protest against the removal of subsidy on petrol. Now, the federal government was still negotiating with labor leaders when it obtained a court order restraining workers from embarking on their planned strike over fuel subsidy removal. The labor unions had planned to begin the nationwide strike across all sectors of the economy on Wednesday. Olufunke Anue, the judge, gave the order after hearing an ex parte request from the federal government. Now, being an ex parte hearing, it implies labor representatives and their lawyers were absent during the hearing. The judge restrained the NLC and the Trade Union Congress, the respondents in the case, from embarking on the planned strike, which is expected to commence on Wednesday, 7th June. Citing the affidavit of the government argued by Maimuna Shiru of the Federal Ministry of Justice, the judge agreed that the strike would disrupt socio-economic activities and unleash hardship on the citizenry. The judge further ordered the federal government to serve the originating summons on the NLC and TUC and adjourned the hearing, or rather adjourned the suit, until the 19th of June. Our guests this morning are all barristers at law. The first in the studio is Barrister Fred Nzako. Good morning.
Thank you. Good morning.
Welcome to VOP this morning.
Good to be with you. Thank you.
Of course, he actually doubles as an economist, plus we also have Eze Eluche and Olayinka Oladaniels, who will be joining us virtually. Good morning, Mr. Fred Nzako.
Thank you. Good morning.
Thank you for being part of us this morning. Now, you remember that about yesterday, we had a situation that occurred. Now, one of the situations that occurred is the fact that the National Industrial Action banned the TUC and the NLC from embarking on any strike whatsoever. They actually stated that this is not a good time and that it's going to represent a serious crack and fracture on the Nigerian economy. Although, apparently, while that industrial injunction came up, we actually heard that the TUC and the NLC have decided to go back to the negotiation table with the federal government, whereby most of the decrees they put in place will be negotiated on. What do you think would have actually transpired if the NLC had not decided to rethink logically, and continue to insist that they would embark on that strike?
Well, if NLC had insisted on embarking on the strike, despite the order of court, it would have amounted to a breach of court order. It would have amounted to a breach of the law. Even though it was an order given ex parte. An ex parte, you briefly explained it in your intro that NLC and TUC were not represented in court. An ex parte motion is a one-sided motion, and that is why you come by way of affidavit in support of that motion. And it's usually approach the court in that respect when there is a matter of urgent necessity, which any delay would dangerously affect. And the wisdom of the federal government through the staff of the Federal Minister of Justice is that it will occasion a lot of hardship. Part of the reasons they gave was that students who are writing WAEC examination will be adversely affected. Of course, you know that WAEC exam is not only taken in Nigeria. It's a West African Examination Council set exam. So the timing is across board. And they felt that it will upstage the students and it will unleash untold hardship on the people and all that and all that. And they were able to convince the court to issue such an order. But I had always maintained that that strike would have terribly been not just unnecessary, but would have terribly undermined the integrity of Nigerian Labour Congress, because the strike was very ill-timed and very, very unnecessary. And I'll tell you why. The government officials have successfully blackmailed Nigerian Labour Congress, very successfully, in the sense that the NLC supported Labour Party. The president of Nigerian Labour Congress, Jai, was seen at various podiums and platforms supporting the candidature of Mr. Peter Obi. And Mr. Peter Obi himself had said that he will remove subsidy. Alhaji Atiku Abubakar said he will remove subsidy. What was he will remove subsidy? And Tinubu said equally the same thing. Because it has become a very public notice that subsidy, some called it organized crime. Our own people called it organized crime. Atiku Abubakar said it was absolutely a major funnel of corruption that was not to be supported. And all the presidential candidates said this is no longer necessary. And above all, you recall that even in 2023 Appropriation Act, the budget of 2023, the issue of subsidy did not last beyond June. What I expected NSC to continue to hammer on and ask is, if subsidy payment would last till end of June, why did NNPC jack up the price by the end of May? That 1 month window, a reasonable Congress would expect that that 1 month window will be enough to conclude collective bargaining process, or at least advance it with government, and then reach some form of agreement so that all this hula baloo and back and forth on the strike will not hold. Now, the government said, we are ready, come let us talk. Because this subsidy is not sustainable. And Mr. President had made an authoritative presidential statement on 29th of May and said, subsidy is gone. And along the line, the handlers of Mr. President said, Mr. President did not mean that it had gone immediately. It means that it is not provided in the budget and it is not sustainable and cannot continue. We expected that they will come and sit down and say, now that this subsidy has been taken off, within that 1 month window, from June 1 to June 30th, Nigerians will still be enjoying the one paid for, except if they begin to tell us that it was actually not paid for. But the understanding of the public is that it was paid for. So why we keep enjoying that in the time being, enjoyment in quote, why we keep enjoying that in the time being, then we'll be negotiating on the issue of removal. Because obviously removal meant price increase,
Do you think the NLC was pressured, by the Nigerian society to embark on that strike? Because it may have seemed like the NLC was not being proactive by understanding that hardship, the complete removal of subsidy would be. So in order to respond to the yearning of the people, they decided to embark on that strike. Possibly they knew that Nigerians may support them, when they embark on it.
Before you respond to that, please, let's welcome the guests that have joined us virtually. We have Barrister Olayinka Ola Daniels and Barrister Eze Eluche. Good morning to you, gentlemen.
Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
All right,
Thank you for
welcome to the conversation. Go
Yes,
ahead,
I
please.
think NLC acted emotionally. Emotionally in the sense that it was very obvious that the sudden increase in pump price it came to Nigerians as a thunderbolt, and nobody expected. Not only that, people did not expect it, because generally people felt it would last till end of June,
Okay.
and suddenly NNPC woke up and then jacked up the prices. And the price increase is phenomenal, from 185 to 500 almost. So it is almost 300% increase, give and take about 270% increase, and that is a lot. Immediately, it has triggered increases in everything, goods and services across the country. In the emotive heat of the moment, NLC felt so incensed, and they did not think through the challenges that go with collective bargaining issues. Naturally, in collective bargaining, you don't use strike as a first resort. You use strike as a last resort. I'm a very huge supporter of workers embarking on strike, but that is when it is reasonable. This particular one would have been very unreasonable. And I kept saying it, that Nigerians have even started reading tribal meanings to it. Oh, Jajero is an Igbo man. Oh,
Politicizing it as well.
Politicizing it, because he's a Labour man from Labour Party, his candidate didn't win. Those were mundane considerations. The major considerations are purely economic. What are the basis for removal of subsidy, and what are the basis for the strike, and what will be the stopgap in between? How do we take care of the people that are adversely affected by this subsidy removal? Meanwhile, It is not only those in the formal sector represented by the labor unions. Labor union has become a kind of representative of all workers of Nigeria, both in the formal sector and the informal sector. But when they now begin to negotiate for price increment, those in the informal sector are left in the cold. And that is why when you talk about palliative, it's not only welfare of workers in the organized private sector, but what of those workers in the informal sector that account for between 70 and 75% of Nigeria's workforce? And that is the key to whatever negotiation or whatever issues we're talking about. Unfortunately, they don't have a voice, a collective voice that will speak for them. It is only Labour Congress that is supposed to speak for them. And that is why Labour Congress is an affiliation of several unions. Whatever comes out of their negotiation kind of directly and indirectly affects every worker in Nigeria, both in the formal sector and the informal sector.
All right, let's come to Barrister Olayinka now. Good morning once again, if you're there. And by the way, I would like Barrister Eze Eluche to adjust your camera a bit so we can take your we can take your. Barrister Olayinka, let me ask you this. Okay, Labour and the government were in conversation, and Labour placed the strike for Wednesday, giving space between Monday and Wednesday for negotiations to continue. And then one would think that the government more or less went behind and got an ex parte order. Now, isn't that arm twisting Labour?
Thank you for having me once again. We have to understand that this is not this is not a new thing. It's been part of the government to play a fast one when things like this come up. You see them going to the courts to obtain an order to stop labor from going. From embarking on strike and whatnot. Unfortunately, they had forgotten that even if the court will entertain such order, it is the prerogative right of labor also to embark on strike. Because the constitution is clear and the provision of the law is clear on the power on an association to demonstrate peacefully. So if labor, the truth is, even if they had not had this discussion and labor had gone, proceeded in going on with a strike, because this is an ex parte order from government, from the court. Labor has not been heard. Where is the fair hearing? If you're going, to stop a strike and you're using an ex parte order to do that, to what extent do you want to achieve that? Because from year in, year out, and we see this happening number of times, even when they get the order, you still see labor, going, but most times you see them probably sheathing their sword, and most times you see even some segment of labor, some department like the TUC and some other people, you see them also deviating and saying, okay, no, this is not our demands. We are not, we are not joining labor. So this has been, because the government always come up with all these actions to divide labor, to make sure that that's why sometimes you see the government coming with the threat of, oh, no work, no pay, and severally. And don't forget that they even went to court, and there's even the judgment of the court, on this no work, no pay. So most times, government always use this to blackmail labor. And for me, personally, I do not even subscribe to strike anymore. We have abused strike in this part of the world. And also looking at what they are going on strike for. Because the question some of us asked when labor was boycotting the meeting, if you claim something is not right and they have called for a meeting and you insist that you want to go on strike, and you are not ready to dialogue, you are not ready to talk, then of what importance is your strike? What are you passing? What is the motive behind it? At least have a meeting first, dialogue, and see whether there could be a way out aside from strike, because most of the time we use strike as the as the last weapon. And for me, I believe that this can be resolved in 1001 ways aside strike all the time, because we have abused
But
it.
you
In
don't
fact, people
think,
don't believe in the strike anymore.
don't you think that Labour boycotted the meeting because they had said something earlier? They said, return the price to status quo. You know, take the price back to 190 or 185 and then set up a committee, then we can talk. Don't you think that was why Labour boycotted the meeting the last time?
Well, no, for no reason, even if you are said, okay, take the pump price to the status quo, so then we have a meeting and we move forward. And NNPC is saying, look, we have not been paid. Yes, there's budget for this money, but we have not been paid since last year. How do we fund this whole thing? You see, we need to be reasonable sometimes. Yes, it may not be fair. It may be, complicated. We may think that, oh no, this can't, or we know, we may see it from our own angle. Yes, it is going to affect almost everything, no doubt about it. All of us are affected. I cannot be in your studio today because I'm somewhere far, and when I calculated how much per liters and all that, how to come, I said, well, please, let's do via Zoom. So it's going to affect everybody, no doubt about it, because it's coming to us, as a sudden, action that we never envisaged that was going to happen. We never saw it coming this fast. Of course, it was going to come. All of us wanted subsidy to go because we know what subsidy is all about. To an extent. So we don't want it because it just for a few people benefiting from this. And so with that, if you think, okay, they had moved, then engage them. Have an engagement with them before you then resolve in going on strike. Not saying that even if, okay, you have told federal government to take it to status quo. Meanwhile, NNPC came end of May to say, this is it. This is the reality on ground. Unfortunately, also, I will also share give the NNPC, the stakeholders their own share of the coin, because if you had a plan of doing things like that, I think you should have called all the stakeholders, all the people that matters bring them together and let them see the reality before you shoot your gun.
Oh, well.
That is not what we saw.
All
And
right.
that is the reason why NNPC is going that route. But at the same time, you don't, two people, two don't make wrong. You don't use wrong to correct wrong. So they are done this. So you are not going to say you're not going to engage them or, have a conversation to have a way forward aside from shutting down economy, because it's
All
still
right.
going to backfire on us.
All right, thank you. Barrister Richie, please, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. I'm here, sure. I am
All right.
listening all through.
Okay, thank you. So here is a scenario. The NNPCL has said that it is winding down crude swap contracts with traders and will pay cash for petrol imports. The idea is that he disclosed this via an interview with the Reuters news agency, and he stated that private oil companies will begin to import petrol as early as this month. In other words, most of the contracts that they have already been dissolved. And the idea is that NNPC, which has been importing petrol from consortium of foreign and local trading firms, repaying them with crude oil via what is known as direct sale purchase, this will now stop. The idea is to open the market for other importers to come in. Do we think this will happen as soon as possible? And when that happens, will that reduce or will that crush the current price of petrol in the markets?
Okay. Thank you very much. Let me just chip in a bit on what my colleagues had earlier stated. The National Industrial Court is positioning itself as an anti-people institution, as a court that was established basically to frustrate strike action by labor unions. Because for it to have moved ahead and given an ex parte order and given the reasons it gave, that WAEC will be this, that people will suffer. Didn't the National Industrial Court know that people will suffer when the government increased the price of fuel? And this has been a position, constant position of the National Industrial Court. When you look at the setting up of that court, it appears it had a clear objective to frustrate labor unions from embarking on strike, which is very unfortunate, which could even be unconstitutional. With regards to what the guests on the studio had said earlier, that the government had blackmailed the Labour Congress. Well, he used appropriate word, blackmail. Is it good for a government to blackmail any segment of its people? That the Labour Party, that the Labour Congress affiliates itself with the Labour Party is not any reason for a blackmail. All over the world, in the United States, the Democratic Party is closer to the labor institutions. In the United Kingdom, the Labour Party is closer to the labor unions. So it is natural that the Labour have to be closer to a political party. That does not mean that they must now toe whatever the parties say. With regards to what you just asked about the NNPC and it's stopping its previous contract sales, the NNPC is a cesspool of corruption. For over 1 year, the NNPC has not paid a dime to the federal coffers, to the national coffers for crude oil sales. So what has been happening is that sales of crude oil has been going on, NNPC has been pocketing it, and for goodness sake, the managing director had the temerity, the audacity to come and tell Nigerians that Nigeria is owing NNPC 3 billion naira, for goodness sake. What is going on in this country? You've been lifted. What is Nigeria owing NNPC for? Does NNPC pay for the crude oil it takes from the ground? And it comes and tells us that it's about contracts? Look, Mr. President was, the former president, Buhari, was Minister of Petroleum for 8 solid years. And he didn't fit to lift the so-called subsidy, which he claimed from the very onset was fraudulent. And he now sets a trap for the Tinubu administration. And Tinubu fell for it. From the podium when he was being inaugurated, he had the guts to tell Nigeria that there will be no more subsidy. Did he not think through his comments before he made that comment? And we're not having the guts to blame Labour. Well, if Labour reneges and says they will not go on strike, it is you and I that will suffer it, because ultimately we won't be able to move again. Look at the streets, look at the roads. People are not even able to move. People are going to trekking. And we are discussing the monumental fraudulent increase in price, and nobody is thinking of what it will occasion to the polity. NNPC can continue with its scam, but if this government, if the Tinubu government wants to be taken seriously.
All right,
then.
Barrister, we've lost you there. Barrister Fred and Zako, here is the situation.
We've
There
lost
are
the connection.
doubts.
Yeah.
Okay, are you done, Barrister Eze?
No. What I was saying is, if the Tinubu government wants to be taken very seriously, they have to address the corruption in NNPC. Because, like Muhammadu Buhari said when he got into office in 2015, subsidy is a scam. There is absolutely nothing like a subsidy. And if the economics of the petroleum industry is taken into consideration, you realize that all this subsidy we've been paying is a monumental scam. Nigeria is the only country where this issue keeps on cropping up. So is our crude oil, Brent crude, which is one of the best in the world, is it negative? What is wrong with NNPC? So President Tinubu's first port of call should be to address this issue of fraud in the NNPC, and not this comment that he was removing subsidy, because it means only one thing: increase in price, monumental increase in price. Have you seen the cost of a loaf of bread? Have you seen the cost of transportation? This is what the government should have taken into consideration. If you get NNPC to withdraw its strike threats, like the National Industrial Court has done, you and I will suffer it. In time, we will be the ones. Already we are on strike, because I would have been on your studio today, but because I was on a personal strike, I can't come because the price of fuel has increased. So gradually, all of us will embark on personal strike actions until when we are tired of all this. Then we'll even see how that National Industrial Court, which is set up, like I keep on saying, to frustrate the labor institutions. Even itself, the judges will also be part of this strike ultimately. Thank you very much.
All right, Barrister Fred and Zako. A lot of critics or economic critics have said that Dangote refinery is a scam, in terms of that they promised that by the end of this month, or rather July, they'll be able to push out about 650,000 barrels of premium motor spirit, and they say considerably that project doesn't seem to be ready to function until possibly 2024 or 2027. Now, the idea is that the federal government is relying on the Dangote refinery to sustain the price of petrol, whereby we can refine locally and everyone can have access to it as a cheaper rate. If Dangote refinery doesn't push permanent produce spirit by the end of July, then what happens next? We'll keep importing.
Well, absolutely, that seems to be the case. But let me quickly correct what my brother Ezra said. I didn't say that government has blackmailed Labour. I mean that Labour Congress has been effectively blackmailed on account of their stand, their political stand on the issues. But be that as it may, if Dangote refinery does not push out petroleum products by July, we'll keep importing. We have been importing. And conspiracy theorists are even of the opinion that this sudden hike in price is as a result of the fact that Dangote refinery needs to be accommodated. Because they cannot, as a private sector, operate in a subsidy regime. How can they sell their product? How can they?
So will
government subsidize them? That is the question. But now, we can't be talking about subsidy in one hand and be talking about deregulation in another hand and be talking about price fixing in the other hand. The three of them don't go in economics calculation. What we are seeing today is a first step towards full-blown deregulation of the downstream sector. Full-blown deregulation. There are many issues that are still pending. One, how is the good refinery going to get its own crude? Will government be giving them crude? At what price? Are they going to source crude at international price? If they do, they are going to sell their products at international price as well. Two, the people that are going to import now under the new deregulation regime, like the IPMAN, because what we are just seeing, under the current regime, it is only NNPC that is the sole monopoly, sole importer, now selling to others. Under the deregulation regime, IPMAN, anybody, if you have your money, you just go and import your petrol. Where are you going to get the dollar? Will federal government through the CBN be allocating dollar to NNPC and not allocating dollar to IPMAN and to other critical stakeholders that want to import? If they are going to allocate dollar, at what price? I think this is a first major step towards total economic reorganization of our system and the financial organization of our economy. Government is already looking at knocking off this criminal variegation of exchange rate regime, where Mr. A is giving foreign exchange at 450 naira per dollar, Mr. B is giving at 550 naira per dollar, and Mr. C does not have connection with the government, and he goes to sources at the black market at 780 naira per dollar. That will not continue. And if we don't knock it off, all the things we are talking about, all the corruption we're talking about will remain.
Barrister Fred,
yes.
Are Nigerians in between the wall of Jericho and the deep blue sea?
Nigerians are in between the deep blue sea and there's the other one, not even wall of Jericho, because the wall of Jericho, you can stick yourself to the wall, and the problem is
so this one is worse.
Between the devil and the deep blue sea. The challenge now is, it needs careful planning. Let me tell you, this thing is not just to come and assume office.
Isn't that
the governors don't, if the governors
isn't that
know.
why NLC is embarking on the strike? Or
It
is
is
that
not
why
strike,
NLC proposed the
strike
strike
will
because
not,
of the planning?
Strike will
the
not
lack
solve
of it?
anything. Let me tell you, strike will not solve anything. This thing needs careful planning. One, the chicken and the egg, which one comes first? Government, as of today, is owing over 80 trillion naira in debt. Our foreign debt is mounting, domestic debt is mounting. Federal government has borrowed money from everybody, including you and I. Now, where is the money going to come from? We do our budget, 70% of it goes into debt settling and debt payment of interest on debt, and that chunk of money, almost half of it, goes into subsidy regime. These things must go. you now sit down and begin to put the economy together so that you'll be able to unleash some capital for the productive sector. The productive sector is choking. Many more companies are leaving Nigeria on a daily basis. The population is increasing. So this is not grandstanding or you begin to be emotive about it. It will not help anybody. Yes, there's increment in price of petrol. What options do we have? Do we have option of continuing subsidy? And you know that as of today, under subsidy regime, we don't even know the quantity of petroleum product that we consume. They keep shifting the quantity from 40 million liters a day to 50 million, and as today they are talking about 56 to 60 million liters a day. Meanwhile, the subsidy regime takes care of up to 105 million liters. So about 45 or 50 million liters go as losses through our borders. To as far as Sudan, Nigeria's petroleum products imported and subsidized by government is the one that feeds the whole of West Africa sub-region. Ghana, Cameroon, Benin Republic, Niger, Chad, up to Sudan.
In that regard, we are the giants of Africa.
So we are the giants
in that regard,
feeding others with an empty stomach. And if you now say there won't be, no, let us sustain subsidy, obviously it is non-sustainable. So what do? If you say, okay, let us continue subsidy until some of those things are put in place, it becomes a case of chicken and the egg. Which one comes first? Government says no money to sustain subsidy, and you are saying put palliatives, put the measures in place before you remove subsidy. Where will they get the money to put those things in place? I'm a welfareist, and I believe that government is for the people. But when it has come to this point where we are today, we cannot be emotive. We can only be rational and deep thinking.
All right, Barrister Olayinka Daniels, I'm sorry, I just need to ask this. Members and non-members of the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, referred to as OPEC Plus, on Sunday agreed to cut crude oil production volumes in order to ensure global oil market stability. But they allowed Nigeria, Congo and Angola to continue to produce maximally to their OPEC quota of 2023. In fact, Saudi Arabia, who is a major oil producer and a key member of OPEC, made an additional voluntary cut of 1 million barrels of oil per day as part of a deal struck by OPEC Plus after hours of intense haggling. The idea is to allow most of these West African countries who produce to make more money since they are experiencing an economic downturn. It now happens to be that Nigeria, being one of the countries given that maximal opportunity, seems to be going through his own dreary circumstance internally. Do you think President Bola Ahmed Tinubu should be quick in creating an emergency economic team so that kicking off, he doesn't have a collapsed economic system?
Well, I think that is the way to go. By now, and I'm sure that the president is smart enough to know that at this point in time, everything that he needs to do to make our economic, move forward, should not be something of a back thought or something of you being slow over. So I'm sure there's a work and pipeline, and I'm sure they are working on that to get economic team to speedily adjust and see how we can maximize this opportunity, that we have, the windows that we have, to see how we can maximize that and let it reflect on where we are at the moment. Because if we have such opportunity, and because most of the basic issue here is about the fluctuation, because a lot of people have said that, oh wow, even the subsidy we are talking about, even the price we are buying fuel as at today, it's not certain that it's going to be like that. It's going to be dependent on the flow, on the fluctuation in the price market, the global price market of oil. So if it goes down tomorrow, maybe good for us. If the price goes up tomorrow, maybe will even be buying at 600 or something, so or more. So this will happen. So it's good for us to maximize the window of opportunity we have now, and that can only be done if we have a good team of the economic team that can look into this and find a positive way in transposing this opportunity to affect basically and majorly the people of Nigeria. Because when we are saying, okay, how does this affect us, or how do we benefit from this? Because I am looking at the average Nigerian on the road that does not understand all this grammar we are blowing, that does not understand all the economic economic whatever that whatever grammar we want to give it. I want to consider those, understand all this. How does it transpose to, okay, eating three square meals? How does it transpose to, okay, I can have electricity? If we have some of these infrastructures, for instance, we're talking about oil, fuel. People think fuel is just about, people driving and they use fuel for cars. A lot of, even the small scale businesses, the barbers there, all those people, they use fuel to power their generator because there is no electricity to do their work. If we can have all those basic amenities and we have electricity, not dependent on fuel to carry out their businesses, maybe this one will affect that average Nigerian on the road, and not, we speaking grammar on economic transformation and all that, but to that woman that is selling pepper on the road, to that woman that is frying whatever, or to that woman that wants to make block, maybe ice block, or to that someone that had to go and use Okada. I mean, riding Okada. Why? Because there's electricity to help him do probably the apprentice in the work in the weathers. A lot of weathers are not. Why? Because they can't afford it. There's no electricity to power. So you see riding Okada, you see them riding Marwa and all that. So all this thing we want to see that on an average Nigeria. That's all about. Not all those. Thank you.
All right, then. I'm going to stay with you for a bit because I was going to ask you this question. It would, stem from a statement made by one of your colleagues here, Barrister Eze Eluche. He did say something that it seems like the NIC, that's the National Industrial Court, is working against the people. Do you share that opinion as well, that the National Industrial Court may be working against the people, knowing for sure that the right to strike or the right to a strike action is, a major element in bargaining?
Well, absolutely, I'm with my learned brother on that, because you see, like I said, earlier, this is not the first time. It's not today. They said, "Who pay the piper dictate the terms." Right? We all know that. All know how judiciary is. Sometimes, we know some and what they do, and again, because some of us we have asked several questions about this independence of three arms of government. Are we really independent? Or if not, somebody will not be interested in who becomes the Senate president. If not, somebody will not be interested in who becomes chief judge and all that. So are we really independent, or we still work together, or we still have just one arm of government but different department, one executive, and we have different departments? I think the industrial court should, and they should look and not taking just anything, any junks that federal government brings to their table, because they pay they pay the bills, so they will do whatever to scuttle, they will do whatever to make sure that it does not fly, because that is the motive. They are gone to the industrial court to say no, this should not fly, and that is what you get. So sometimes when a lot of people say, there's no hope, there's no trust in the judiciary, you cannot really blame them when you see things like this, that somebody is bringing ex parte motion to you to scuttle or to stop a strike, and all you can do, I've seen a situation where we have filed ex parte, an application in the court, and the court has said, no, you have to put these people on notice. So what stopped them from looking into it from that angle? But what we get is, stamp, rubber stamp judiciary. This is what we want. Just make sure that you do that, and that is why the politicians are using the judiciary to, I mean, to how do I put it now? To achieve their own malicious motive. That is why you see them. They will take one matter to the same 10 different court of coordinate jurisdiction, just because this one will not pay them. They know that, oh, if they go this one, maybe this one will give them the answer they want to hear. So that is why we are here, and we always have issues complaining, or the people of Nigeria complaining about judiciary. So
Alright.
this, I am with my learned senior on this, absolutely, that
Our
sometimes
barrister, thank
the,
you.
the industrial courts are used to, I mean, as a bulldog to
Alright.
achieve a particular purpose.
All right,
Barrister
thank you very much.
Ezeluche.
Yes, thank you.
Barrister, so apparently there was a resolution between the federal government and Labour yesterday evening, and one of the resolution is that the Trade Union Congress and the Naija Labour Congress is to establish a joint committee to review the proposal for any wage increase or award and establish a framework and timeline for implementation. One of the key issues I also noted is the fact that TUC and Labour are asking to revive the CNG conversion program earlier agreed with Labour centres in 2021 and work out detailed implementation and timing. Do you think between now and the 19th of June, when they're meant to reconvene, the federal government and Labour Union may come to some of these agreements? Because sometimes when it comes with the federal government, they may stretch things a little bit. But based on a couple of agreements and resolutions they had, what do you think are the key factors, the key pointers that the federal government should agree with based on what Labour and the TUC are actually asking for?
Just address one or two issues that has cropped up. You talked about, you mentioned the Dangote refinery. I would urge Nigerians to look at the foundations of that refinery, look at the cost implications, how much money was put into it, what was the initial cost outlay of the refinery. I remember when Nigeria paid over 20 million US dollars as equity participation in that firm. By the time you go through all this, you now ask yourself, is this actually Nigeria's refinery renamed Dangote Refinery? I mean, that is an issue that has to be addressed, because when you look at the figures, they don't add up. Your guest in the studio had said that the price increase, the removal of subsidy, was the commencement of deregulation. Now, if government really wants to deregulate, they had already made NNPC a limited liability company on paper. But the reality is this: you want to deregulate, then the land on which this oil is mined from, is lifted from, must also revert to the owners, not even the state or the local government area, but the individual families that own it. You cannot be claiming deregulation when you are still seizing people's land and you are using that same land to lift oil, and then NNPC has the guts to come and tell us that Nigeria is owing NNPC 2 trillion naira. We have to address these fundamental frauds, fundamental deceptions, if we really want to move ahead in this country. With regards to the question you raised about the agreement between the NNPC, like the last the barristers said, these are all blowing hot grammar. Whether the Labour Congress or the TUC goes into an agreement with government, they've been going into millions of agreements with government, which government never fulfills. So the issue is there sincerity on the part of government to even get into dialogue? Look at the court case the government took to the NIC. You are discussing with Labour. Then in the midst of that discussion, you surreptitiously sneak into the NIC, apply for an ex parte order when you are still negotiating, only to shock the Labour Congress with the orders of court that they must obey, or that otherwise they are now in contempt of court. So even Labour, when they go into these meetings with government, they bear in mind that dealing with a rascal institution, with an institution with a government that can be talking to you and doing something else behind. So until these issues are addressed, we are just joking. And as we are joking, the reality will be staring us on the face. Nigeria is the only oil producing country in the world where we are still going through these scams of allowing us to produce more. Because even OPEC knows that Nigeria's crude oil, more than half of it goes into private pockets. That is why in their last meetings, they even allowed Nigeria, Congo, and Angola to keep on producing, even produce more. Because the more they produce, the less even gets to their countries. I keep on repeating, President Tinubu has a chance to restart, to start things right. Towards the twilight days of the Buhari regime, Nigerians were shocked to realize that over 500,000 barrels of crude oil per day was being stolen from the Nigerian sources. Now, have you heard anything about the investigations? Has anybody been arrested or tried? Are those crimes still continuing? And we're talking of subsidy removal. Come on, we're not fools. Nigerians also think, where are these 500,000 barrels? If they are stolen, who was stealing them? Was it disappearing to? Look, and one thing about the crude oil sector is this. Listen and listen well. There is simply no way 500,000 barrels of crude oil can be disappearing every day without the world knowing, because it takes very huge ships. If you go to the Lloyd's list in London, an insurance brokerage firm, they will tell you who was coming to lift this crude oil. But the government has refused.
Oh, Barrister Eze, we've lost you there. Okay, Barrister Fred and Zako, here is you heard what Barrister Eze Luce said.
Yes.
Basically, practically more of the truth. But the thing in time past, I recall during Adams Oshobale's time, when he was the NLC president, regardless of whatever court's injunction, NLC usually commences and backs on their strike. What changed now?
Nothing has changed. The difference is that the strike under Oshomole that you referred to had the backing of the people. This particular one does not.
How are you so
think
certain?
so?
I'll tell you, yes, I'll tell you why. Because the people have already been sensitized about the challenges and the problems ahead. It is a case of how do we solve it. And will strike solve it? We expected that the labor union should come up with alternative solutions. It's not just to embark on strike for the sake of embarking on strike. What are the alternative solutions? I agree completely with what my brother Eze said about the corruption in government and the failure of government to do what is right. I agree. I agree also, and I also champion the restructuring of Nigerian economy and Nigerian polity. These are all given agreements. But under the circumstance we find ourselves today, some of these things will take time to implement. Some of these things will take time to change and amend our laws to become effective. The stealing of our crude resources that have been happening for years. President Muhammad Buhari for 8 years was Minister for Petroleum Resources.
Do we have the luxury of that time?
Well,
Does Nigeria have the luxury of time?
we don't have luxury of time, but what options do we have? Do we have the
Continue to
luxury?
suffer?
Do we have the luxury of subsidy? You
Should
see,
we
let us
continue to
situate
suffer?
the issue. Let us situate the issue the way they are. We have been saying for opting time that we need to restructure Nigeria. Today, they are stealing the gold in Zamfara. They are stealing the whole solid minerals in the North Central. They are stealing the solid minerals in the Northwest into private pockets. Meanwhile, the Mineral Act vests the whole thing under the purview of the federal government. The same Mineral Act has vested, the Petroleum Act has vested the oil petroleum resources under the soil in the purview, under the purview of the federal government. Who are the federal government? How come you go to the board of NNPC, it is populated by people whose states don't have any petroleum resource. But the people who have that resource at their backyard and who are being affected by the debilitating exploration of this resource, they are not on the board. These are terrible situations that obtain in Nigeria. How do you solve them? We talk about restructuring anchored on true fiscal federalism. You can never run away from it. And until we get there, they will continue to steal oil. They will continue to refuse to turn around the refineries. How come the 4 refineries of federal government, none is working at up to 30% capacity? And the same federal government is spending more money to buy shares in a private refining facility. How does it resonate with any reasonable human being? The rest of the world, equivalent of NNPC, It is not in unbundling NNPC that lies the solution. It does not. Today, NNPC has added an L to its acronym, NNPC Limited. What is that limited? It has gone into private hands. Who are the private hands?
Certain individuals.
So, how do they still, I agree with Eze, how do they now still have the right to mine, to exploit our solid, our crude petroleum?
It belongs to everybody.
So, they said they are doing a joint venture with all the mining, exploration companies. That they are the operators. If you go to wherever they are, they say they are the operators of the NNPC, Shell, Chevron, exploration rights. How this is the only country where an individual is given mineral license. Individuals. And what do they do with it? They just lease it out, sit down in their homes, and they'll be making money in millions of dollars. Doing nothing. Just selling that paper called mining license.
Well, you hear opium.
So there is no reason why Nigeria will be poor. But the anger of the people cannot be unleashed and strike alone, because that will increase the agony of the people. That is my opposition. My position now is this. One step after another. Delegation has taken off. The man in Ipman said that price template is only NNPC's own.
Since they are now a limited
that it does not concern them. But the only thing is that within this 1 month period, before they import their own petroleum products, they will be buying from NNPC to service their customers. And that is why NNPC will be selling, say, at 488, and you see other independent petroleum marketers selling at 500 or thereabouts.
Depending on NNPC is just on it, so it's not representing Nigerians at the moment. This is a
the way it is. NNPC is not representing the interests of Nigeria. The way it is not.
All right. So
meanwhile, the same NNPC, is claiming that Nigeria is owing them 2.8 trillion. Now that is what is getting my brother angry. How can I owe you for what belongs to me? I owe you for what belongs to me. But that is the lopsided structure that is mad in controversial corruption. That NNPC has been described as Nigerian national petroleum corruption, irrespective of the effort to rebrand NNPC. It is still a cesspool of corruption, and it is to the benefit of those who strangle Nigeria. Let us give President Tinubu support to see whether he can untie the hands of those stranglers. There are people who strangle Nigeria, and they are not many. You may not know them. I may not know them. But those in authority, they know them. They know them. Now there is a new sheriff in town. To what extent do we support him?
Talking about crushing oil thieves.
Oil thieves.
Yeah.
He needs support.
He needs support.
He needs support.
But does that mean he knows them?
Why
not just order for the
No,
arrest?
he should. Hey, you don't order for arrest easily. You don't. You don't. First, you have to conclude your investigation. You have to even block them from the source. And that is where international collaboration is necessary. And that is where he needs the support of our people. We can't just begin to drop strike on his table. It will be very frustrating. Because he needs to do a lot to remove the hands of the stranglers from the neck of Nigeria. And that is why he said that Nigeria must breathe.
Let me ask you something. Do you think that during his campaign, these are stakeholders in the Nigerian economy?
Yes.
Any president who wants to come on board needs to have a conversation with these people.
Yes.
They will have an agreement and say, we will let you come in power if you do certain things for us. Do you think the president didn't get into any agreement with these individuals, that there's a tendency he may not pursue things as you think he would?
In 2003, Chris Ngige got into an agreement with his so-called political godfathers. When he became a governor, he did what the people wanted. They hounded him all over the place, even kidnapped him, did all manner of things against him, but he stood firm and the people were with him. And that is why it's always good that the people stand firmly behind their leaders. When the leader begins to do things that will be against you, you now raise your voices and then work against or speak against that leader. Before Ngige was Mbanuju, who tried to make fences with his so-called godfathers, and they strangled Anambra State, and the state could not breathe. And Chris Ngige now remove the hands of the stranglers. President Tinubu can do that.
All right.
He can remove the hands of the stranglers.
Okay.
If he becomes a collaborator in strangling Nigeria and Nigerians, we will know and we will talk.
So
but
now,
at this early stage, let's
we should give him
support.
time. Okay.
Yes.
But in giving him time, we know that the common man is the one bearing the brunt of all of this. Transportation from one place to another has drastically increased. Feeding is something else entirely. I mean, I had to go. I mean, I went to the barber the other day, and I was waiting for change, and they told me, "Bros, you need to add more money." Just to cut my hair.
Don't
And
need
I'm
to
thinking
go,
of
you
going
don't need
on
to go to the
Afro.
barber. You join me in barbering yourself.
Well, you do that already.
Yes, I do.
I will come and learn.
You can see the effect.
I will need to learn. I will need to learn. But now we know that part of the things that the NLC has put on the table is minimum wage going up to 200,000 naira. Do you think that is achievable?
That is not just achievable, it is also not feasible. It is not just achievable, it is not feasible. But there is need for increased minimum wage. But the challenge with minimum wage is that alone is not enough. Because how many people work in the public service? When you increase their wages, those in the informal sector will wait for them at the back end to also increase their goods and services. It becomes general price increase across board. An economy is one of the major indices of an economy that is not doing well. When we talk about macro and microeconomic stability, we need an economy where you go to the market today to buy this your wristwatch and it's sold to you at 10,000. You come back a year after, it is sold at 10,200. Not you go to market today, it is sold at 10,000. You go the next 2 months, it is sold at 15,000. An economy, and now that I'm talking about even luxury. How about the basic necessities? Food, clothing, shelter. How is it provided? When we talk about palliatives, we cannot be talking about palliatives that can be taken away, like the petroleum products, that when you subsidize, half of it is taken across our borders. What about housing? What about food? What about other road infrastructure?
Yeah,
These are things where government should put money. Now, what about you don't even talk about conditional cash transfer? That one, the corruption will not allow that to work, but it works in some other countries. What is wrong with the philanthropy in Nigeria? Have you not noticed that Nigerians are not philanthropic? Have you not noticed it?
They don't even have the money to
So
give.
why wouldn't there are rich men that can embark on philanthropy? It took Jimmy Carter from America to come here and cure Nigerians of Guinea worm disease. It took Jimmy Carter. Then why can't the rich among us come together to provide cheap, affordable healthcare facilities for the people? The religious and faith-based organizations, why must they be flying private jets when they can as well establish hospitals and schools that are affordable? These are things, some of them do, but they are not affordable. These are things that can be done, and the people will have direct benefit, and not every time oil. Why can't government? I went to one country, and there was facility for public hiring of bicycles. You go to a place, just pay a token, it will be unlocked. That's the way you take your trolley from the airport and you ride your bicycle, go to the neighborhood and come back. What has gone wrong with public transportation? So these are things that will be put in place. If the train service is running from here to Enugu, the man from Benin Republic will not benefit from it, except he's inside Nigeria.
Thank you.
So we need to do some of those things to ensure that the life of Nigerians get better. But you cannot do that when you are funneling away that chunk of the money through subsidy.
Thank you, Barrister Fred Nzako. As usual, thank you for coming on VOP this morning.
Many thanks.
All right, as well as Barrister Olainka Daniels and Eza Luce. Thank you so much for being part of the conversation this morning. We do apologize for the technical glitch, but you made a huge impact on the program this morning. So thank you for being part of the program. Up next is business and then entertainment.
All right, going straight into business, since you've launched business, let's just go straight into it. The central bank says the federal government recorded a fiscal deficit of 930.8 billion naira in January and February 2023. The CBN stated this in its monthly economic report for February 2023, and it said the estimated overall fiscal deficit of the federal government expanded in February due to a drop in the retained revenue. All right. And it also added that the development led to the expansion of the overall fiscal deficit provisional by 22.8% due to a 16.4% surge in provisional federal government capital expenditure and a 7.7% fall in federal government revenue. Quickly, another business story here. Meanwhile, the House of Representatives Committee on Aviation has rescheduled its investigative hearing on the controversial launch of Air Nigeria, Nigeria's national carrier, by the last administration led by Muhammadu Buhari. Now, the committee had invited relevant stakeholders to the hearing, earlier scheduled for Monday in Abuja. Well, however, representatives of most of the stakeholders had left the venue before the arrival of the committee's chairman, Nolim Naji, who came about 2 hours behind schedule. All right. Well, the federal government had boycotted domestic airlines under the aegis of the Airline Operators of Nigeria and signed a deal with Ethiopian Airlines to float the Nigerian carrier. And the AON had consequently dragged the government and its agencies before a court to stop the process. Well, that's all we have for business for today. We will take a break. When we come back, pretty much I think this is where we'll end the show. So I must say, once again, thank you very much. Entertainment will come much later in our entertainment program, so catch up with entertainment right there. My name is Moses Humphrey. I must say a very big thank you to our guests on the show. And thank you to you too for being part of the conversation here. Don't forget, let's continue the conversation, all right? Underneath our page on YouTube, it is Voice of the People TV on YouTube. So drop your comments under there. Follow us, subscribe, like, follow us, be part of everything that we do right here. All right, I must say I've been working with Esther Nwachukwu as well. Well, thank you once again. Stay blessed. Be with us again when we come your way tomorrow. Bye for now.